Thanks for letting everyone in, Caroline. Appreciate that. Okay, thank you very much for dialing in. Let me just double check it's reshared. Can you all see that again?
Sharing away.
Excellent, great. Okay, so there was only ever going to be one thing that I could talk about on this one, and it had to be the Milburn Report. I've tried to get through as much of it as I can to try and help everyone out. I know, Caroline, you've been through it before as well. It's a long, long read, and what I've tried to do today is try and pick out some bits I'm hoping will be useful for everyone, or at least more informative. So I've actually snipped the items out of the report. You can see the full wording for yourself. This is on record, so if anybody wants to sort of go back and actually check the details of it afterwards. And then what I've tried to do is, when we get to the end of the bits that I've been able to go through, is there were three key points that kind of sat out, and especially with where we've got a lot of you are involved in recruitment with apprentices as well. There's a few key bits that I think are very much drawn out of this. Okay, so that's the whole point, and feel free at any point just ask a question, jump in. There's quite a lot to get through in it. So yeah, just don't wait till the end. If you see something, ask a question about it, go for it. Or if you want to comment on it, please do. But first, this is a genuine health and safety moment that came from this week in my own house. So I came home and I could smell something burning, and it turned out that a mirror was left on my other half's dressing table, and genuinely that picture on the left, it had started to burn and singe the brushes. I was shocked, and if we hadn't been coming home when we did, who knows what could have happened next. I don't know if this is this is not what I expected, something from as simple as a mirror being left on a table exactly where you'd expect it to. But yeah, my house almost burnt down this week just from that. I know that's quite an extreme end, but it was amazed just coming through the window, the sunlight. The only other time I've ever seen this happen was probably about 10 years ago. I was on a site, and there was it was kind of on the edge of an urban area, and there was a lane next to the site where the taxis used to park all the time. And when I was going up it just to check the boundaries of the site, I found a dry log that was also on fire. Looks like the taxis, because they'd been sat there or people had parked their cars there during the day. Again, the sunlight had come through the windows, directed it straight onto the dry logs next to it, and it was starting to smoke, and there was a small flame that had started in it. Bizarre, completely unexpected, but yeah, that was genuinely what happened this week. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that, or anybody else finds that has had that experience. It's in my own home was a first and a brand new one for me. Go on, Caroline.
Always goes to say, take your rubbish home as well, especially glass bottles, because that's what sets fires off. So yeah. Countryside code.
Thank you for that.
Take your crap home and don't put it in a window.
Yeah, thanks for that. It was bizarre, but you can see there how burnt it was. Okay, so that was a little bit more relatively fun than the rest of this. So the Milburn Report, just out of interest, just a show of hands, who's actually been able to read through and actually got into the Milburn Report, has read it so far, just out of interest? Caroline? Okay, has anybody skimmed and sort of done anything beyond what we've sort of heard in the media and on LinkedIn and the news and things like that? Has anybody else done a bit? There's a couple of people there. Kat, you've done some. John, you've had a look at it. Great. Okay. So again, please add in, any of you guys, if you want to add into this from what you found, please do. So the idea of this, I wanted to go through it to share with everyone, to try and help you understand a bit more what's in there. So this is it, the Milburn Report, Young People and Work, May 2026. And I think, as Caroline pointed out on the calls the other day, this is the first report. So this isn't everything. This is the first report. So the current state. Is that right, Caroline?
Interim report is what it's called. So the state of, in effect, it's the state of the nation.
That's it. So it's there to investigate the rising number of young people not in the education, employment, or training needs. So it's not directly about apprenticeships, but as we go on to it, they are a key part of this, and I think there are lessons that need to be shared and learned from this. So I'm going to run through this and just mention some of these key figures, the bits that stood out. 1 in 5 young adults are outside education and work. And what keeps coming up is it talks about a system that sees them but doesn't help people. There's this growing gap that's talked, and by the way, I've put the page references on it as well. So if you wanted to watch back the recording and go back and read a bit more into this, hopefully you can use those references there, so you can do that. So it talks about a gap between the workplace demands from day one and what young people are equipped to provide. And importantly, there is a key theme that comes up in here. It's not because of laziness of the young people, but it's through anxiety, inexperience, and a key theme is not given the chance to learn how a workplace actually works. Talks a lot about voluntary sector. So a lot of this, a lot of the good stuff that is happening is not actually getting the support they need as well. So even where there is support in place for young people, short-term grants, tight budgets, short-term planning, so unable to plan sort of long-term, and this common theme around responsibility being dispersed, lack of accountability, and wanting to act, but the lack of ability, the lack of levers, which is a real shame. So some of the key stats then. So UK sits above the average rates for high income countries. So EU, 15-20-year-olds, 9% are NEETs. For us, we're over at 12.8%. So that's over a third higher than Europe, just as a comparison. There's quite a few tables in here, so I tried to snip them in. But the table on the left there is showing that comparison to some of the other key countries and key European Union. So the NEETs are impacted by overlapping factors. So this is something that comes up over and over again. It's not just one thing. And I've got to be honest, I probably thought from what I'd heard, a lot of things were saying that COVID had impacted young people. What this report does is actually says that it has impacted them, but there's a whole load more of things that are going on. It talks about this multitude of overlapping cohorts and overlapping factors that interact that have actually had this detrimental impact on young people coming through. So it's not just a single thing. There are so many more factors. So this report is actually really good for drawing those out. A lot of it talks around complexity and risk. So there's a couple here that's to do with the mix of gender as well. So boys versus girls and the differences on there, which I thought was quite interesting. But there is a big piece around the hidden NEET population. So it says there's a large cohort of young people here who we don't understand. 44% of young people are not claiming out of work benefits. So they are NEET, so they're not in education, employment, or training, but 44% are not claiming benefits. So it's there. I think it's got 314,000 old in England are neither in work nor in education, but not claiming benefits. So this impression may be that there's a lot of young people that we've already mentioned, laziness, sat doing nothing, whatever it is. Actually, there's not some hard figures here saying they are not trying to get work. And a piece around the bottom, a key theme again, is around where you grow up. So the opportunities that you're actually given in your life. So this isn't something you choose. Where you grow up, the education you receive, which is different in the different areas. All of these can shape the outcomes for individuals. So it says there specifically the opportunity is unevenly shared, which I think is very, very poignant. There's a breakdown there around what people are looking for, waiting to start jobs, looking for suitable courses. Disability and ill health is another one that comes up, and I'll come on to that a bit more later. So again, it's not just one point, one item. It's not just COVID. There's a raft of items that the report identifies. Again, if anybody wants to add anything to this, when I've been through the report, what I tried to do, you'll probably notice the page numbers are jumping around at the top. I went through the bit at the start and tried to pick out the topics that I thought would be most poignant, the ones that I thought showed the array of what the report is saying and looked at. So there's lots of stuff in between these, but I've just tried to pick these out to try and give a flavour across the board of what's in there. Another key theme is around the pressures, and it says that previous generations, so like a lot of us, haven't experienced. So simultaneously, there's COVID, the digital environment, and there's a huge part around capturing attention, how much time people spend online. The housing market is becoming further out of reach, raised entry thresholds for labour markets, we'll come on to that in a second. Insufficient mental health system, that includes insufficient support as well. The report draws that out. There's quite a large section about the NHS and the good work they do, but also the lack of support they have. And this epidemic of loneliness, I found that really interesting. It's not something I'd really thought about before. It kind of links into that isolation and COVID, but that epidemic of loneliness comes up and a few times. And then this convergence and putting all these together. So again, as I said at the start, this isn't just one item. It's multiple, is what the report says. It identifies it. Talking about support, so it says like the world is changing faster than the support can actually catch up. So I know we as employers, if you looked at what we expect from our grads and apprentices compared to what providers are able to provide, even just from an IT system, it struggles for them to sort of keep up to what the current systems we're using as employers. This is a much bigger picture, but the same principle. The support that's in place for young people, it's not keeping up with what they require. And it's down to the young people that are having to navigate this transition from adulthood. And there's a big piece around scrutiny. So a lot of what's picked up in here is a heightened scrutiny on them. And it says there they are the most observed, most measured, most commented on. Behaviours tracked, debated and judged. But importantly, it's not by the people who have ever asked them what their lives are actually like. So there's lots and lots of really good quotes in this report that Alan Milburn gives from where he spoke to individuals in different places around the country, direct quotes, and they're really powerful, some of them. It really was quite eye-opening, and especially, even if we took this out of not as a professionals, as parents, as family members, there's a lot to take away from this, that you think about your own nearer to home, not necessarily in your workplace, but also actually in your own family, friends. There's a lot to take on board through here. There's an interesting piece around expectations again about previous generations, how they could have reasonably expected the transition from education to work would lead to financial independence. And it says quite clearly there, the expectation has collapsed. Post-war period work that people expected that end up eventually owning their own home. And again, that expectation has collapsed. So yeah, there's one of the examples of those young people quotes. For 20 years ago, people at my age, they'd be like, yeah, in the next 5 years, I'll own my own house. Because everything starts there, right? Like stability. It's such a different landscape. And this report does really well to highlight that difference. It is a massive generational change. Again, this is around some of the causes, some of the overlapping issues. The second bullet point there around children and young people mental health disorders rising from 12 to 20% in 6 years. I mean, that's massive. The common mental disorders have increased by over 7.5% as well from 2007. So there's been this huge increase in people's well-being that's going on in addition to everything else, economic, everything else that's going on. And then at the bottom there, when I mentioned about social media earlier, the overlapping drivers, I was interested, poor sleep, social media, smartphone use, cuts to services. The bit at the bottom links directly to smartphone use. 10% of 12 to 13-year-olds went to bed between midnight and 3 a.m. due to scrolling on their phone. That blew my mind. I don't have a 12 or a 13-year-old, but there's some quite shocking statistics in here, and that one that stuck with me. I don't know if that stands out to anyone else. Maybe it's just me, but that has stuck with me. So there's some references again to COVID, talking around schools closing. It's interesting here. It comes back to that point around loneliness, around friendships went remote, and social development often stalling. I know there's a lot of there's always been a lot of discussion around like exams and progress and academic progress and all that kind of jazz, but yeah, friends went remote for whatever reason. That stands out to me massively. That's really sticking at me. That social development stalled. It's not something I expected to read as blatantly as that in this report. And then the last point there, the effects have not faded away in the way the system expected as well. So there was these impacts. Everyone had a theory around, I'm guessing it'll be better, once we get back into normal, it'll be fine. And then the report identifies that very much isn't the case. Going back to this point on loneliness then, 70% of 18 to 24-year-olds experience loneliness. 70%. And 16 to 29-year-olds are twice as likely to feel alone compared to those who are over 70. These are some things I did not come in to read in this report. I was expecting to read that kind of thing. And the one below it as well, 1 in 5 18 to 24-year-olds have one or no close friends. It's not what I was expecting the report to say, if I'm honest. It's there's some of these things here that have really, really stuck with me. And about that double hit as well, so austerity and the pandemic. I'll try and speed up because there's quite a few of these. There's a lot in here again. We talked about, mentioned earlier, around where you come from, where it starts. Talks about the challenges work begin actually at home, some of the opportunities that you're offered. It can depend on, a lot of people, if their parents are in the industry, they'll probably come into it as well. I know lots of people have come that route. But if you don't have that, then how do you access some of these opportunities now? Experiences at school, that's another one. It's positive. 64% enjoy school or college, and 65% understand that good jobs are available. But for many NEETs, it says their school is traumatic, stressful, boring, involved bullying, low expectations, isolation, again coming up, for minor rule broken, and felt unseen, talked at and written off, less visible. It is a really tough read in some areas about this, but it is starting to build a picture when you start putting all these things together. Actually, this is a really tough challenge for those people. This one's really important to me. It's not a lack of motivation. So the applications black hole, and this is one of the things that I was thinking again about the group of people who attend and might want to listen to this. It is around recruitment. It's a really interesting point. Young people want to work, and that needed to be put there to stand up for them. It's not a lack of motivation, but a lack of response. I found this really interesting. Applications disappearing into a void, interviews followed by silence, recruitment processes designed to deter rather than select, and the bit at the bottom was quite often, even where they got rejected, they weren't going to get the role. They just wanted someone to tell them honestly how to improve. This bit here I found really interesting. I suppose it's probably linked to what a lot of us in these kind of forums talk about, but that applications hole must be really tough for somebody. I think I can't remember who told me, but for some of the for one company it was over 20,000 applications. I think it was across graduate and apprentice opportunities last year. One company, that's huge. I don't know if anybody wants to share their own sort of figures of how many applications they get, but you can see from both sides it's going to be really tough to how do you respond to all of those applications. It's really difficult from a resource point of view from this side, but also if you see it from the young person's perspective, That must be horrible, just getting no replies consistently.
From my own personal experience on that, when I was applying for my apprenticeships, I went through something like 15 or 20 different companies. That's across the UK. From 70% of them, I didn't get a response at all. One company just blankly didn't respond to my application. It was really disheartening to just not get any response. Even when I requested feedback, they just said, "You're not the right fit." No ways to improve, no benefits, no cons, just nothing. To be fair, even here, I wasn't supposed to get the role I'm in. I got quite fortunate that my CV got passed along after the apprenticeship lead left. So they could have very easily just said, "Sorry, our apprenticeship lead's gone. We can't take you at this time." But they were quite kind and passed on my CV, and thankfully I'm here. But up until that point, I was sort of, yeah, as you say, in the void and not really knowing where I was going. So to have that additional response of this is what didn't go well, maybe try and improve this, go get experience in this, that's where that process will be greatly improved.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Harry. I really appreciate that. Thank you for that. So then this kind of opened a whole next piece, was all around entry level jobs then. People spending hours online, looking on online platforms as well, looking for jobs. Overwhelmingly unproductive and demoralizing is how the process, I think, has been described there. And on the right, there's one of those quotes as well. How do you want me to have experience if I'm only 18 and you're not even letting me have the chance to get the experience? That's the kind of frustration that is mentioned quite a lot in this report and comes up over and over again. So one is recruitment. That's one of the key themes that for me that I picked up on this, is that process. But again, is around work experience and how actually people can access it, young people can access that. There's also barriers that are talked about. So, transport can be a significant barrier to be able to take up some of these opportunities, and the need for immediate income. So where if a lot of work placements are for free, you don't get paid for them, it's difficult for people to take them up to get that initial work experience to then apply for and get a paid job. The myth, they don't want to work. 30% wanted to move into educational training. 54% wanted to work. It's there. I don't know the number of people that they went through, but it's clear. It's not a case that they don't want to work. 11% said they don't think they will ever move into work. I mean, that talks about that aspirations. It talks about the chances they think is available. 29% of them applied for jobs they do not want because they were desperate for work. So this isn't just, I think probably I was probably more fortunate when I started. You were able, there was a lot more opportunity to think about the kind of careers and jobs we wanted. It says they're desperate for work. It's in right smack bang in the middle, the yellow next to the green on the right hand side. They're desperate for work, so they're applying for whatever jobs they can get. 19% applied for jobs every day. That was another one that really blew my mind. I remember when Carillion went bust and trying to apply for jobs then, that was only 8 years ago. I had the experience though to back up and to put on those CVs. Even that was pretty tough, but 19% of young people applying for jobs every single day, that's got to have an impact on people. Then we kind of got into the report then talks around some of the emotional side of it as well, and more they're a soft generation and just need to try harder. So this was some feedback from employers. 25% of employers describe young people as lazy and work shy. 33% of employers called them overly sensitive. 25% of employers called them entitled. 10% of employers admitted rejecting a young person on the basis of their age. 93% of young people have experienced negative treatment in the workplace because of their age. 26%, the treatment was so severe they did not want to work again. This is these kind of words and findings, and this again really stuck with me. I think that's only one or maybe one of two that were highlighted. I mean, I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that, but it's that I found a really stark statistic that came out of this report. I don't recognise that in my own workplace. 93% have experienced negative treatment, but this is across the board for what's looked at. So that's a huge. But I do agree that I've seen a large percentage of that that have had negative treatment at some point. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that, if anybody else has seen that, or that's surprising to anybody, but yeah, that one really did stand out to me.
Yeah, I think that's really shocking. And I don't recognise that in our workplace, and age is meant to be a protected characteristic. So I don't know if 10% of those are all being now taken to tribunals and things like that. But yeah, none of this is easy to digest, is it?
No, thanks for that, Mary. I appreciate that. That's kind of why I was I figured I might as well, once I got into this, I thought the benefit for you guys is at least if I can give you some of the highlights, some of these areas, some of these things to go and look at, you can do so when you feel comfortable or whenever you get the chance but it's there. But it is, yeah. I mean, I think, what's this, page 102? I think we're not even a third of the way through the report at this point. So it's there's a lot like this. But thank you for that, Mary. I appreciate that.
No, thank you.
Mental health, another myth. Mental health is an excuse. And this I found really interesting, actually, is around medication adjustments left people unable to concentrate. And it talks around the third bullet point there, applying for jobs when well, then having to withdraw when unwell. So you could kind of see how that could be perceived if you weren't. I hadn't even considered that as a thing. Until I read this report, I hadn't even considered that somebody might apply for a job when they're well, and then they become so unwell they can't proceed. I had never considered that, not once. And this it talks at the bottom about the fluctuating reality of like fit and unfit, and there's so many different phases between that. It's a whole spectrum. I didn't get a chance to go into that, but that was something I hadn't even considered, the impacts of that when people are that second one, actually I forgot about that one, discharged from mental health services for non-attendance because they were too unwell to attend. That again is it blows my mind that people are being affected by that kind of piece. John, go for it.
Yeah, so that obviously blows my mind as well. But I will share something with the group. So I suffer from anxiety and depression, and I'm on medication myself. I have autism, and I was on the pathway to be referred to mental health specialists, and I was asked, given an appointment time, or not given an appointment time, actually given a rough date of when they might call me, right? So I'm working, my phone's on silent, I miss one call, I have a message left saying, you've missed your call, you're now discharged from the service. And if you can't advocate for yourself like young people can't, I think, then that kind of service, it just shows how completely overwhelmed that service is, because they just want to get people off their books, in my own personal experience. And even when I advocated for myself, I was not able to get back on the pathway successfully. I had to do it privately. So I can't imagine what these young people are going through.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you for that. It's one of many things that just I never thought this is what I'd be reading in the report. So the reference is there. I put the 2.4 as well. It's just so you can find, if you want to go to that section, read a bit more. But yeah, it was another bit that really stood out. And then we kind of get on to around generational piece again. So are they different? Young people are different. I think that's what yes, it's quite blunt there at the top on the right. Yes, they are. They're not lazier. They're not less intelligent, but they've come through a different route. So the digital world has kind of rewired everything: communication, relationships, stress, time. And this piece again around going back to work experience, so they have less experience in the workplace. There's a lot more levels of anxiety, depression. But interestingly, the ones at the bottom I thought were really, really good. They expect more flexibility, which I don't think is a bad thing. Less willing to tolerate poor treatment. Again, I don't think that's a bad thing. And more open about mental health. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. So actually, there's lots of things that are being brought through from these young people that we can learn from, and being more open and honest about some of these things. Maybe it's not them that's causing a lot of this. Maybe it's not them that's part of this issue. There's a lot of, for the rest of us in the system, maybe to look at as well. But I thought those bottom three were really, really interesting. They stood out for me. So another thing coming back to like the work experience is fewer entry-level jobs. Is this the one that's it? So the first two bullet points on this, the number of mid and lower skilled jobs has fallen by 1.6 million. What was that? Over the past 20 years, that was it. Top right-hand corner. Over the past 20 years, the number of mid and lower skilled jobs has fallen by 1.6 million, but the higher skilled jobs have grown by 6.3 million. So again, you're trying to think, how do people get on that first step to get that first bit of work experience? We've talked about some of it might be inaccessible because they can't afford to do it. They don't drive. They haven't got the transport. They may not have the opportunity to find it, but those entry level ones are reducing. 1.6 million reduction last 20 years. That growing imbalance that's talked around, but the competition has intensified. So that was it. Fourth point down. Fewer lower skilled jobs. Competition has intensified, but we've got lack of experience because people can't get into there, and they're excluded from taking those increased 6.3 million increased higher level jobs because they haven't got the experience yet to actually get into that. It feels like this, and there's lots of references to the system. It feels like what Alan Milburn's picked up here is a lot of the system is not set up and right for what our young people are going through, these needs. So I think that's, from his point of view, I think he's doing a really good job of drawing out a lot of these challenges. Now, there's a couple of mentions about apprenticeships in here, and the one big one is it should be one of the main routes to employers, which I think we all agree with. But what it talks around is the second one. The apprenticeship levy has driven a significant reallocation towards older workers and higher level qualifications. So I know Richard's not on the call, is he? If Richard was here, I'm sure Caroline, you'll back this up. Richard would always say, well, that's not in our sector. That's not in civil engineering. We've actually been growing. Is that right, Caroline? Yep. So this is across the board. This is, that's why maybe when, as Mary and I both said, that 93% of negative treatment towards young people we don't recognise, because this is across all sectors, all industries. But starts for 16 and 14-year-olds have fallen by 35% across the board. Level 2 starts for young people have fallen by 68%. That I was gobsmacked by that. I didn't expect that. And level 3 starts are down by 20%. I am assuming this will be from, does it give a date? I think it's from 2017. Does that sound right, Caroline? Yeah. But yeah, that level 2, I know, was it maybe a year ago? 2 years ago, there was a lot of discussion, certainly in our sector, around level 2s and 3s and who was actually employing. Were we just all employing straight to degree apprenticeships, and therefore by losing that band of like level 3s, does that mean we're actually missing out on the opportunity to bring people in our sector? Caroline, go for it.
Yeah, so I think we've also got to consider the fact that education is also compulsory. So NEET, part of it is education, and a lot of people told to stay in education till they've got their A levels, got the BTECs, got the T levels, whatever you call them. All that stuff is now done at the sixth form FE sort of sector. So most people get shoved into this bracket whether they want to go into an apprenticeship or not. So by the time they've come out of that, if they're capable, they've already got a level 3 qualification. They don't want to go back down. They need a level 4 plus apprenticeship to start. And actually, we're also talking about graduates here as well. 18 to 24-year-olds includes graduates. So they want more from life. So whilst we've got lower numbers of apprentice starts, we've got a competing system with full-time education, graduates, people get told to go to university. They still get told to go to university. So, and then they're coming out without that experience in any form. They've not even got like Saturday jobs, working in a bar or whatever.
Yeah.
They haven't got any of that experience at all, which I find really quite odd, bearing in mind the amount of fees that people are paying now. When I was going through university, people worked alongside going to university, even if they had a full academic sort of calendar. So I find it really odd with the amount of fees that people aren't working at the same time. So
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And there is a lot that's in the report discusses around careers guidance as well. Like, I can't honestly remember how much of this I've left in for these slides because I was trying to get everything in. But there is a huge piece around the defunding of careers guidance as well to give people the right sort of steer. So this comes back again to recruitment. Changes in recruitment. Previously, many entry-level jobs filled through informal routes. I thought this is a really good throwback to the 80s and 90s. A family contact, short conversation with employers. Yep, I'll take you on. But if you weren't, it kind of said it shut outsiders out, but it actually gave people, young people, a chance to be judged on potential. I really like that. I thought that's another thing that kind of stuck with me, being judged on potential. I'd like to think I think it's something that I was taught, and I think it's something that I've certainly given. I'd like to think I've given people opportunities on the potential I can see them. But the recruitment process then, online application portals, automated screening. I've been in various discussions this week about AI, so that's quite interesting. Psychometric testing, video interviews. So it's gone from, I know somebody, a family contact, I'll have a short chat with somebody, I can start getting some experience, to online application portals, automated screening, psychometric tests, video interviews. That is a huge jump. So again, from exactly as Caroline was saying about when we started and things we went through, a lot of us, that isn't necessarily what's happening now. And it is a huge, I almost struggle sometimes to be able to relate to some of these things that the young people have to go through now. I think this is where I ran out of time, so apologies, but I've snipped all the bits anyway. The gap, this comes back to the employer's gap, but the bit in the bottom right-hand corner, too many people now leave full-time education with little or no direct exposure to work environments. I thought that was really, that was another one that stuck with me. It comes back to this work experience, this recruitment, this expectations around, in some of the previous slides, Alan Milburn talked about day one readiness is what employers expect, which I can relate to. But how can they be day one ready if then they've never had a day's work, and they've been trying to get a day's work, but there's all these barriers in place. So we expect something of people, but the system, how do we support them to actually get into that position? I thought that was another one that stuck with me. What else have we got on here? These are again barriers around motivation, previous work experience. Main challenges employers experience when hiring young people: lack of soft skills or work readiness. So that's top on the bottom right hand corner there, 42%. Lack of work readiness. But yet there's lots of areas in this report that identifies how tough it is to actually get any work experience. I mean, again, I don't know if anybody wants to relate to that. That's something they've experienced. I think certainly I'd hope that for any of my apprentices or anyone that I've worked with, that the expectation is now to give people that bit of everybody starts in a new job on day one. Everybody does. Every single person on this call has started day one in their first job. Everybody's been there. Nobody can avoid that. It's not possible. So everybody, I know when I did it, I wanted people maybe to give me a bit of support, give me a bit of a break, allow me that time to build into it, give me the support. But yeah, that work readiness, that's another theme that kind of comes across. John, go for it.
Sorry. Obviously I'm talking to a group of people who are probably much more experienced than me in these things, but obviously there are core services within universities that provide career planning, application support, jobs boards and things like that, and careers fairs, and which potentially connect people to employers. But is there something lacking in terms of a service that actually facilitates the work experience pipeline, so you can actually get people to have, even if it's just a few days on the course that they're on, to have some work experience, so they're there, they can then go into the office and have that, say I do actually have some experience.
I would guess, and I'll come to Caroline next, and I might even pick on Erin if I can. With a lot of apprenticeships, just trying to find that employer can be really tough. Trying to get that work experience, I would guess it's probably a huge frustration for colleges and universities as well. Probably more so the colleges who do T levels. Am I getting this the right way, Karen? Where they're looking for that placement, and they must find it so frustrating that they can't get enough employers to actually help them to get that. There's a huge again, I haven't been able to. There's so much more that I had when I snipped all the titles that I wanted to share for this. But around funding, like for some of the further education colleges and the higher education, the funding piece is huge. Funding, when I say it's huge, it's been significantly chopped and withdrawn and reduced. So you've got to think people are all trying to balance and do what they can with limited budgets that keep reducing. And the report, again, I didn't get a chance to drill into that, but I suspect there's lots of frustrated people that want to help and support this, but they're just not given the opportunity. Caroline, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's happening at sort of, we'll call it the red brick universities as well, for want of a better way of putting it. Manchester University came out a few weeks ago after this came out and said they intend to give everybody on every single course some form of work experience through that programme. And I think one of the things that we've lost through introduction of fees and everything else like that is the placement or the sandwich year. So I think that's been decimated as well. So because that used to be a really good way of taking a year to do that work experience and trying before you buy. And most people who did those years got converted into, a really good long-term career. But that route, to me, the numbers have dropped significantly on that. And I don't know if any other universities on the call want to comment on that particular opportunity, because I know that has been looked at. And I think some of it was that some universities charged the full fee for that year. So that was part of it. That may have been credit bearing year for part of a master's program or undergrad program. So it was, that sandwich course thing has been on the hit list for about 15-20 years. I did a whole thing in the life sciences around that many moons ago. So,
but you still need employers to actually offer to take as well. So that's the bit where it's all of us in this trying to support each other.
Sorry, is that? I'm sorry. I won't. I know you.
No, go for it.
With this report, do you think there's some pressure that we could potentially, as a professional institutions, communities, higher education institutions, put on the government to say that it needs to be kind of enforced in part of the it's a mandatory part of courses going forward, because that's the only way that people can actually enter the workforce successfully?
I think first of all, I'd recommend when you get the chance, have a look beyond my few slides, have a look through and read and pick out some of the bits, because there's so many bits in there that are so interesting to understand the full picture. As we mentioned at the start, and Caroline corrected me, this is the interim report, and there's more to come. And I think I'm really interested to see what comes next, because I suppose when I heard it in media first, I didn't realise it was interim. I didn't realise it was incomplete. I just everybody kept talking about the Milburn Report has been issued. I didn't know till I was on Caroline's call that there was more kind of to come from this. for me, there are three main themes that from the stuff I read that come out. So one is around recruitment, how tough it is, that process. Two is definitely around work experience and the lack of opportunities, or how challenging it's been made for people to actually get work experience first. I can't remember the third one. My head's a mess. But I've written it down. We'll come on to that in a second. But I think it's worth we start talking about it now while we've got this report. I think now it's out, we don't let this disappear. And then I don't know what the follow-up date is. I don't know, Caroline, if anyone else knows when the follow-up or the complete report is due. But when it is, I think that's certainly the time to definitely.
It's later in autumn. Later in autumn. So
Great.
What I think will happen is government will start consulting with people about how to solve, because what we haven't got here is this lays out the issue. It doesn't give solutions to the problems that we're facing. So autumn is the expected next sort of publication date. It is an independent review commissioned by the government, so it shouldn't be affected by all the fun that's going on at the moment in number 10.
There was a whole section on government policy churn, all that jazz. That was in there as well. I didn't get a chance to read into that. But there you go. So I think, if anything, if you can take anything from today, is go and have a look at some of these bits. Even just look at the what's at the front of it. Look at some of those key points that are in there. Go and have a bit more read into it. Refresh over here. Have a look at some of this. And then when that autumn one starts talking to people about it, start talking about some of these issues, raising it, and then by the time we get to autumn, which isn't far away, maybe that's the time for us to act. So like CIHD, ICE, iShruti, RICS, whoever it is, maybe that's more the time that we can act. Right, I'm conscious of time, so I'll. Sorry, John, go on. Do you want to add something?
No. Just sorry for monopolising the call. Thank you.
Not at all.
Thank you.
Not at all. You the great ads. I really appreciate that. So this I mentioned earlier, careers guidance, work experience, employer engagement again. This was one as well. What the system measures, recognise and rewards. So it talks about what's actually put in place. So the school system primarily measures attainment. So this is something, I think when I first heard about the Milburn Report, the thing that stuck out to me was talking around outcomes. And especially it's something that's a bugbear for me, is around actually making sure that we should be looking at a successful apprenticeship as opposed to how quickly can we get to Gateway, how quickly can we get this done. So they're real, and I've had that discussion with at least two people this week. It too often counts qualifications rather than student destinations. That again with me stood out. Thinking about, like recruitment, work experience, around funding, where it is, but that bit there, qualifications rather than destinations. It's probably one of the biggest challenges, fights that I continually had over the last 3 years around with the apprentices. But I suppose, this identifies it for NEETs, is that ability to look at the bigger picture, the longer term, the outcomes, the destinations. But then it does say there, like the schools are currently measured, recognised and rewarded. That's what drives this. So again, to be fair, this isn't education or one of the partners or employers. There's a whole big piece here that if we all want to make a change to improve it, we've got to start from the top as well. But yeah, that qualifications rather than destinations, that was one that stood with me. Right, I'll try and finish up really quickly. That was it. Where they leave education, so this should be the point where they progress towards work and pathways. It says pathways after secondary education fail to support young people. I thought that was really interesting. These should be the points where they leave education, they progress towards work. Unfortunately, many of the pathways during and after secondary education fail to support young people. Again, we mentioned at the start about the system. If that system isn't in place, if that system doesn't encourage it or allow people throughout it, then we're all kind of failing those young people. It's not. They're up against. They're trying to run uphill, aren't they? They're trying to push water uphill. It's really difficult. What else have I organised? Oh, things like what was this? Again, referencing money there. It's dependent on student numbers, retention, and completion. So the system again, it's the same kind of outcome. So these are my three. That was it. That was my third one. So for me, And this is only scratching the surface of what's in the Milburn Report. I tried to go through and pick out some of these pieces. So definitely the challenges around getting work experience. It blew my mind that I hadn't kind of put these together, but some of the quotes that are from young people in here really stand out. The changes to recruitment, the challenges of that. This really pushes it to how much of an impact this has, and that's stereotyping of young people. So I think some of those comments from employers around laziness, this report backs up the young people. This report says they are not lazy. They are not wanting to find work. That's not what was found in this report. It backs young people up. So that's one of the things I was quite surprised at with that stereotype. And as we mentioned earlier around some of the negative treatment in workplaces, I felt that was a real shame. Really was a shame. So that's as much as I snipped. I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that. I know we've only got 5 minutes left. I haven't got any other sort of points to go through today. I don't know if that was of interest. It was certainly a tough read over the last couple of weeks trying to go through this, if I'm honest. I was trying not to be too gruesome about it, but I thought it was best to be honest and share some of those snips with people. So, yeah, any comments or feedback on whether that was of use would be appreciated.
I thought that was really useful, Colin. I only joined about 1:30 because I had another meeting, but I'm definitely going to hunt it out and go through in a bit more detail. But I think that part, what you said earlier about the placements was interesting because I think from my point of view, obviously, as you're aware, I only work in apprenticeships at the University of Salford. So my experience of this is a bit limited. However, I would say in the last 6 years, we do an awful lot to support people on the traditional programs to get those placements. Mm-hmm. But part of the issue is the employers. It's not having the employers. When we do get them, we're really good at kind of sharing them with the current students on program. So, for example, I'll have employers that we work with on apprenticeships, and because I tend to be that kind of main contact, they'll say to me, well, actually, it's not an apprentice I'm looking for, it's a placement. And so I know the person I need to send them to, and she's really good at pinpointing and sharing that with, say, for example, they're a construction project management company. They want someone on a construction project management degree. So then we can pinpoint, right, well, level 4, this person is primed for it. So we're quite good at that, I would say. But I think where we fall short is the number of employers that we've got to do that. We couldn't ever say to the entire cohort, we will get you a placement, because they're not always there like that. It is a case of first come, first served. Yeah. But we're always keen to see what more we can do with employers on that, because placements are a great way of getting the work experience. And actually, the figures kind of show that generally they'll also lead to employment with that company.
Agreed. There's one area, before I come to you, Karen, there's one area that I didn't see in the report, and maybe it's just I didn't read it, I'm not sure. But it doesn't talk about or doesn't look at the opportunity for employers when they're actually looking for recruitment. Employers need work. What's not considered in here is actually the opportunities, the economy, when projects and tenders are coming out, how long in advance people get sight of them, how quickly things change, how much of a focus on cost there is. None of that is in here. So, one thing to know, and as an employer, I should have twigged this earlier. I didn't even spot it till you just said that. That's the one thing that I didn't see in that report that I think actually is missing. The bigger impact, again, which government drive, if I want to out with, with funding, opportunities and routes, that is something that's missing. Go on, Caroline.
Yeah, just going back to the placement, you do tend to get, Aaron, you do get better results, don't you, with moving them on into employment. Ironically, this was one of the issues with the T levels and the placement within the T level, because actually they did the placement in the T level, they left the T level to start an apprenticeship. That was classed as a failure on the T level, and absolutely bonkers, because they're actually progressing into the workplace and still in training and employment. Yet the government itself sets these criteria and doesn't look at the long-term impact. And that is one of the daft, crazy things about metrics. DFE, DWP need to sort it out, because they're two different sectors now, two different places in government, which is utter bonkers.
That's not the B word I thought you were going to say, Caroline.
I could think of a few.
Okay, so I did include in here. I nicked your slides, Caroline, on this as well. So I've snipped Caroline's 2 report slides on the Milburn report as well. Put those in there. So thank you for that, Caroline, on behalf of TAC. Okay, is there any? We've got 2 minutes left. Is there any questions anybody's got? Any support anybody needs? Anybody else want to mention anything from anything we've discussed today? Nope. Excellent. I'm sorry it was a pretty heavy session. I do apologise about that, but I felt it had to be done. And it really is, yeah, it's made me think about my own family, if I'm honest, as well, having read this. So, yeah, I have got personally a lot to go away and think about my own, close to home. Thank you, everybody, for your time. I really appreciate that. I'll share the recording and I'll share the link to it after this. So if you want to watch back and see any of the links, they'll be in there. And I'll also share the link to the PDF version of the Milburn report as well in the chat. Thanks, everybody, for your time.
Colin.
Have a great
Thank you.
weekend.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
everyone.
Have a good
Bye.
weekend.
Cheers, Colin. Cheers, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.